engagement to ask you questions based on materials placed before the committee and any other matter that the members may wish to ask you. The questions have to be short, precise, concise, and we expect similar answers. Avoid any attempt to engage directly with members, even if they ask questions that you are uncomfortable with. Address them through the chair. And members are equally advised that engage the nominee through the chair so that we have an orderly process. We will, after going through the preliminaries, give you 10 minutes or less, the lesser the better, to tell us briefly about the story of your life. And at the end of the proceedings, we'll avail you another 3 minutes to tell us your wish or anything of that nature. We want to start by asking you a few questions, procedural issues on the requirement for documentation. If you have supplied them to us, the clerks will still want to see your originals to compare with what you have given us. This can be done as we go on. Do you have the tax compliance certificate? Use the mic.
I do, Chairman.
Do you have the Higher Education Loans Board clearance?
Mr. Chairman, Speaker, I do.
Do you have a clearance with the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission?
I submitted the documents, and I think they were writing to you directly, but I have the stamped...
you have the stamped questionnaire?
Correct, correct.
That is what is required, but we have received a direct communication from them. Do you have a certificate of good conduct from the DCI?
Yes, I do, Mr. Speaker.
We also have a letter written by them. Have you ever been charged in a court of law or convicted of an offense as a consequence of that charge?
No, I haven't.
Are you a dual citizen of any country apart from being a Kenya citizen?
No, I'm just...
You hold only one passport?
Citizenship, yes, John.
Okay. In your journey through life, what is your financial net worth?
My financial net worth, as declared in my documentation, is 400, and let me get the exact amount so that we don't have to... 400, I think 498. I'll just clarify that very quickly.
Speak closer to the mic.
I'll do that, yeah. Chairman, my financial network, as have declared in item number 25 in the criteria for vetting and approval, is 482,200,000.
Tabulated as?
Tabulated as farms in Olengurwane, Kipsonoi, a house in Spring Valley at 95, my current residence, some rental property in Westlands, in Matundu, valued at 50 million, vehicles, bank account, and investment in a family tea value addition business called Chebango EPZ Tea Company at 185 million, a total of 482,200, Chairman.
Right. Are those your current sources of income?
Yeah.
What are your anticipated sources of income?
My anticipated source of income accruing to about 12 million shillings annually, coming from salaries, farm, and rental, Chairman.
Thank you. I'll now avail you your under 10 minutes to tell this committee the journey of your life.
Mr. Chairman, let me confirm again that I'm Davis Kimutai Chirchir, born some 62 years ago in a village in Kericho called Cheptigit, but soon migrated to Bomet. It was the larger Kericho district those days, where we've settled to date. I went to local primary schools in Bomet, specifically today Sotik constituency, in a village called Kipketi, and progressed through my primary education, joined Kericho High School between 1974 to 1978, Form 6, 1979 and 80, and I joined university in 1981 to do a course in physics and computer science. I graduated in 1985 and joined the then Kenya Post and Telecommunication Corporation, where I went for what was called traffic engineering course to be able to handle management of traffic engineering in telecommunication for 9 months at the now Kenya Multimedia University, then Central Training School. I worked and rose through the ranks to be the general manager in charge of information technology and change management, where I served for 10 years between the year 1993 to the year 2003. I left Telecom briefly as change manager chairman. I handled the liberalization and the opening up of the telecom market.
Mr. Chirchir, the Hansard reporters say try to move closer to the mic.
It's too tall.
But you can raise it, can't you?
As general manager, Mr. Speaker, in telecom...
Just hold on. Is that any better? Okay.
As general manager in Telecom Kenya chairman, at the advent of the world liberalization in telecommunications, I participated and worked closely with the management in government to draft legislations, having done a lot of work on the legislative changes that were happening worldwide because of the changes in telecommunication, and basically got the communication authority legislation at that time that became the regulator, and got Telecom Kenya to operate under the Companies Act, while Postal Corporation did operate, of course, under the Postal Corporation of Kenya Act. It is then that we're able to license and give, because up to then, telecommunication or postal service was a monopoly and a preserve of the government under the then Act. I think it was Cap 411 of the laws of Kenya, now repealed. And that's when we then brought in Safaricom, Celtel at that time, that have revolutionized the way we do business in this country and given us an edge over other African countries, because I think the legislation was properly done. I say so because just a few weeks ago, our neighbors like Ethiopia are only giving out a second mobile telecoms license, giving out an M-Pesa license to facilitate movement of cash and bankability of the unbanked people in the local communities. In 2007, I was out of telecom or out of public sector for a while, and I joined and spent more time in managing family business. In my documentation, I've also shown that we run a business called Bon Voyage Limited, which is a telecommunication company that supports Safaricom in a number of areas. And so I ran that company until 2007, when after the challenges of elections of 2007, I applied, because of the challenges we all faced in 2007, to really be part of the solution in reforming the electoral process in Kenya. I was taken in as a commissioner in the Interim Electoral Commission, where I served as a commissioner, and looking at the reform requirements to institutionalize good practices in elections as recommended by the people who came to assist us, including Johan Kriegler, a renowned judge from South Africa. I was able to work there for 3 years, and we then established some of the great solutions we use today to manage our elections in this country. Upon the expiry of the term of the Interim Electoral Commission, I was sourced by one political party, then United Republican Party, to be the Secretary General, where I worked in that party, and having formed a coalition with the then TNA party, we were able to form government, and I was appointed as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum. I served in that office for 2.5 years, and Speaker sir, in the excellent State of the Nation address of Thursday, 26th March, 2015, my name was among the 175 names that were tabled in Parliament on allegations that I was not aware of, and I wrote to the President as he had basically requested those who had been mentioned to step aside. So I wrote to step aside to allow investigations to take place in line with Chapter 6 and the other clauses requiring integrity of an office such as the one I hold. In one paragraph, I did say, Chairman, in a public office, one must be worthy of the trust of those who place their trust on them. Accountability and integrity is of paramount importance in the public office, particularly the office such as the one I hold, and you have graciously appointed to, I've been graciously appointed to, and which I hold in trust of the citizens of Kenya. I therefore, Chairman, step aside to allow for investigations to be carried, and upon conclusion, the specific issue here that was of concern was what was eventually coined as the Chicken Gate scandal, which was a collision or a claim of a collision between the commission at that time, the staff of the commission, and maybe the commissioners, to get kickbacks to award a contract for printing of ballot papers to a company called Smith and Hussman of the UK. I think I should state at this point that the investigations were completed, and I did manage to get documentation to prove that those who were found culpable were charged, and I was not one of them, Mr. Chairman. In 2007, because of my performance in every area of my works, I was still sourced to support Jubilee Party, and I was eventually the presidential chief agent in managing the elections of 2007, and Jubilee emerged the winner of that election. I would want to claim that because of really the fact that
07 or 2017?
2017, sorry, Chairman, 2017, and we did emerge winners in that election. And after that, I still continued to run the businesses I ran until 2022, when I was appointed to be the Chief of Staff in the office of the then Deputy President, now His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya. That is the long and the short story of Chirchir. I've worked with most members of Parliament in my small stint of a bit of political life, and therefore most of the members I see in the House are not new to me. And Thank you, Speaker.
Chair, I'll now open the forum to members to ask you questions. They could be followed by one or two clarifications where necessary. But like I said, decorum of the highest level is expected. And I'll start with the Deputy Speaker.
Mr. Davis Chirchir, first I want to congratulate you for your nomination for appointment as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum. I think through the Chair and Honorable Chair, I would like to make a declaration of interest under Order 90 of having known Davis Chirchir personally. I've worked with him at the Electoral Commission. I've worked with him also in the political formation of Kenya Kwanza and as agents of the presidential candidate then. But I want to confirm that in no way, Honorable Chairperson, will my personal knowledge of him affect my judgment or will make me get engaged in any bias as we go through this vetting process. And with that, let's seek your permission to proceed to ask the question. Okay. Mr. Davis Chirchir, I want to ask you questions that Kenyans are asking. That's what I've been doing throughout this process. Things that matter to Kenyans. Kenyans are asking, the cost of electricity is one of the highest in the region, and this affects the cost of production, hence the cost of many of the basic commodities that are required by wananchi. It's also said that the high cost of electricity is because of the loop-sided contracts between KPLC and independent power producers. Yet, despite the fact that Kenya is endowed with wind, solar, and geothermal renewable energy resources, so the question Kenyans will want to hear from you is what steps will you take should you be approved as Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum to ensure that you mitigate and deal with these challenges that are facing Kenyans? Thank you.
Davis, you'll have to hold. We'll do batches of 4 questions. Then you come to answer all of them together. So you can indicate as we go along. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Chair. Davis, you've alluded to the so-called chicken gate scandal that made you step aside in the year, was it 2015? 2014, thereabout, and investigations that followed. Would you be privy to the outcome of those investigations? What became of those investigations now that you are not reappointed to cabinet in 2017, as much as it was the prerogative of Uhuru Kenyatta to appoint or not to appoint you, but you went ahead to be appointed as Chief of Staff in the Office of the Deputy President this year? Is that to mean nothing came of the investigations, or what was the issue? Two, if you are approved, and you had begun some very good work with the last mile program, the first term of the Jubilee administration. But as the Honorable Sholai says, Kenyans are really concerned on the performance today of our power generation, power transmission companies, especially KPLC. Hundreds of thousands of Kenyans today are connected to power. Some consuming that power and not paying for it because KPLC is unable to provide them with meters. Many others have applied for a connection of power, but they cannot get connected, again on the excuse that there are no meters, and contractors have dropped lines into their houses. They have not gotten the lines into the KPLC system. What would you do immediately get into office to fix some of those systemic problems that are there at KPLC to make both connection, transmission connection, and billing of power in this country a little bit more efficient? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chirchir, unlike some of my colleagues, personally haven't had a chance to interact with you or to work with you previously. This could be the first engagement I'm having with you at a close range. That notwithstanding, of course, there are certain things which are not adding up. And why do I say so? Just to pick from where Honorable Chumwa has left, you've indicated that you stepped aside, or you are forced to step aside. Because I was in the House then, 2015, when the President came to Parliament and read the names of those who had fallen short of the requirements of Chapter 6 of the Constitution. And therefore, you are forced by circumstances to step aside. And you say investigations were conducted. I'm not sure if you are aware when they were concluded. But that notwithstanding, from your own submission, you said that you then participated actively in the campaigns of 2017, and your coalition won. Isn't it curious, then, that from 2015 to 2022, you are essentially out of public service? And yet, your coalition won in 2017. And the President, of course, is the appointing authority. He could have the reasons why he didn't appoint you. But I'm sure you could have been curious enough to find out from the President or whoever it was why you are not featuring among the appointees, having worked so hard to deliver the victory, and also having been cleared, if at all you are cleared by the investigations. So secondly, until you came, of course, on board much later in 2022, as a chief of staff in the office of the Deputy President, at the tail end of the term of the government. That is very curious. Two is, I'm sure you are aware, because it's in public domain, that executives of Smith and Usman were eventually tried, convicted, and indeed jailed in the UK. Two of them, a man and his son, for having bribed the interim electoral commission officials with 50 million Kenya shillings. So the bribers were convicted and jailed. Those who were bribed have to date remained scot-free, if you may ask me. And to Kenyans, of course, you are one of the suspects, because it was in public domain. So you may need to update us again as a committee what you could be knowing as far as the outcome of these investigations are concerned, and if at all any action has been taken against any person that was involved in this scandal on the Kenyan side. Because as Honorable Nyet said earlier on, the requirements of the Constitution at Chapter 6 are so stringent, yes, that any slight indication, any slight suspicion that you are not having a proper integrity could bring a lot of question marks in Kenyans' minds. So kindly help us understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Junet.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, mine is brief. I wanted to ask the nominee that if you look, even though you are out of office by then, but the last 5 years, the places where there have been many cases relating to corruption, even though now we can tell them they are politically instigated, but let's say politically instigated corruption, let me use it for the good of it, that word, were majorly in the energy sector. If you look at Kenya Power, if you look at Kenya Pipeline, if you look at this, what is your view? Because that must be the thing that is making the cost of living, that must be the thing that is making the cost of electricity very high in this country. What do you think you'll do differently? Because you left office in 2015, then another CS came in. He looked like he continued with the trend that could have made the cost of electricity and the cost of energy very high in this country. What is your view? Is there corruption in the energy sector, or it is as clean as snow and all those cases were politically instigated?
Davis, you can answer those four.
Thank you, Chairman, and for those four questions, I'll run through them, starting with the Mheshimiwa Gladys Shole, on the cost of electricity and whether the contracts are lopsided. Having served as CS Energy and Petroleum, I can say with some level of authority, I understand the sector and the challenges